Welcome to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, a podcast about geek culture by lawyers with your hosts, Ben Siders and Kirk Damon.
And welcome back to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, the podcast that asks interesting questions that don't have any answers with your host, Ben Siders. That's me, and the other guy is Kirk Damon.
As always, Kirk is the captain of the Enterprise.
We are intellectual property lawyers and certified geeks practicing law in St. Louis, Missouri. You can find me, Ben, on Twitter at Benjamin Siders. Kirk is at KirkDMN. And we are here today to talk about Stranger Things.
We're going to talk about Stranger Things because we want to talk about Stranger Things.
As we're recording this, it is December 30th, the year of our Lord 2025, and Kirk and I, unbelievably, Kirk and I have seen every shred of Stranger Things content so far.
Except the Broadway show.
Except the Broadway show, which I found out 20 minutes ago existed.
I found out about half an hour ago.
And tomorrow is the series finale, and since it is so rare that we have both seen everything there is to see about something, and yet we are out ahead of the finale, we thought we would do something we used to do all the time, which is speculate wildly about what's about to happen.
Yep. And so if you haven't noticed, I did some comment on LinkedIn. The thing for me has been catching up on the show. If you remember rightly, we did a Stranger Things episode about 4 or 5 episodes ago, at which point in time I'd basically seen season 1. And we were talking about sort of the remainder of it, but I was, the value of the 80s and stuff like that. But I'd only really seen season 1. It got me started back on the show again. I basically rewatched part of season 1 and literally did I'd forgotten how good this show was.
Yeah, you were kind of obsessed there for a while. Like Kirk walked in every morning. He's like, all right, I'm halfway through season 2. I'm halfway through season 3.
And that was the thing, is I just started sort of plowing through it. I made it through season 4 about a month ago. Then my son decided he wanted to watch it. And so we were waiting for season 5 until he could make it all the way through. He made it all the way through. We actually finished. We were basically sort of, watching the stuff starting in season 5 when it originally came out. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we didn't get to see the sort of, the real-time Thanksgiving episodes. But with the episodes that they had after the Thanksgiving release, we ended up actually being half an hour behind on the Christmas release. So we actually watched the first 2 pieces of book 2, I guess, is what we're going to call it, basically in real time. We were half an hour behind. We had to
That's
move
rare
off.
for you.
Yeah.
You guys should understand how rare it is for Kirk to watch a show while it's actually on and relevant.
And so we wanted to then watch season 3. We finally finished that the next day, so we were able to get through it. So basically, I was watching essentially the book 2 in real time. I can't unfortunately watch the finale tomorrow just because of where I'm going to be and timing and stuff like that. But I will be able to watch it in the next day or 2, and definitely before the weekend's over.
I'm sure we'll have like a post-mortem episode we're going to do here too. So my experience is different. I watched this all as it came out, and so I've seen season 1 again, but it was probably a couple years ago. I've only seen season 2 a second time because my daughter watched it. I've only seen seasons 3 and 4 once, and it was when they came out. And season 4 was 2.5 years ago. I mean, it's been a while, maybe a year and a half. Either way, I don't remember it super well. So coming into season 5, I kind of haven't had my head in the Stranger Things universe in a while.
Whereas I've watched 3 seasons, essentially in the last 2 months.
Yeah. So we want to talk about a couple of things. One is sort of on a craft and writing level, which interests us as attorneys and as writers. Why Stranger Things seems to be falling to the same disease that plagues so many successful sci-fi properties. We think that's interesting. And then also we're going to talk about kind of what's going on and what we think is going to happen in tomorrow's episode. Yep. I have no idea, to be honest.
And if you guys haven't seen it, there is going to be wild spoilers in the course of this for pretty much everything that's out except the episode that's tomorrow.
If you are not current, you may not want to listen to this episode because we're not going to be pulling any punches on what has already happened. And then we have an episode coming up probably after the first of the year. We should also say Kirk has seen all of Andor, all of Mandalorian season 3. Yep. So we are actually both behind on Star Wars now. I haven't seen any of Vision season 3 yet.
I haven't seen Vision season 3, but that's because my daughter loves Visions and we haven't had a chance to watch TV at all. So.
We'll have some Star Wars content to get to you soon. So this is all to say that there's a lot coming your way in the early part of 2026, plus our annual Public Domain Day episode.
Yep, which is coming, and it's a sort of interesting Public Domain Day again. Nothing really major, I don't think, this year.
I haven't checked, so we'll find out. But anyway, so lots going on, lots coming up, and we thought, let's start with this. The fandom has, to some degree, let me back up. I'm not a huge online person when it comes to these fan communities. I used to join all the Reddit forums and follow all this stuff, and it just mostly pissed me off and made me frustrated and annoyed. And things that I didn't think were bad, people convinced me I should hate. And likewise, things that I thought sucked, people tried to convince me were good. And I just have decided I'll keep my own opinions what they are. So I've not really done much delving into the online content. That said, I've just picked up passively from scrolling Reddit for other purposes.
And for dealing with me.
And you. But no, like there are Stranger Things memes showing up in other like subreddits. Like I showed Kirk the Lord of the Rings, if the Council of Elrond was written by the Duffer Brothers thing, which was actually pretty funny.
It's very funny, actually.
And really kind of spot on. So what we thought, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Stranger Things in terms of how season 5 is really all the seasons have been very different from season 1, but season 5 is really, I think, stumbling a bit under the weight of expectations.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing I think we're getting into, and stuff about this. I'm kind of the same way. I don't do a lot with online communities, but what I tend to do is I'm a lot of times online, like looking, because it's, hey, I saw this thing, does it matter? And things like that, trying to figure out if other people are speculating about stuff. So a lot of times what I'm on is I'm looking for somebody saying, is somebody speculating on the same kind of thing I am? Is there any reason to believe this makes sense? And for the people who are seriously into the show, are they into more? We've been kind of joking about it around our house because it's something I wouldn't have said, again, 6 months ago, I wasn't particularly into. And I think I got like 5 Stranger Things related gifts for Christmas. I mean, it was, like my wife got me the Demigorgon Crunch cereal, by the way, just which I think is hilarious. But it's one of those things where it kind of became this phenomenon, sudden thing. And we kind of got swept up in the fan
good
piece
timing,
of it.
too.
Yeah. The timing and the fan piece of it. And again, this stuff with that, recognizing that I never was really swept up in it. Like I wouldn't have said I was a huge fan of this show, and I've kind of become one.
Well, because you also, if you guys don't remember, Kirk didn't see it when it came out. You only got to watch it because you eventually got the DVD set. It took like 3 years to actually watch the first season, because I wanted to do an episode on that back when it came out, and you hadn't seen it. So Kirk's kind of just now getting into it.
That's 10 years ago, believe it or not.
Oh, it's been a long time, yeah. So what's going on here? Let's go back to the first episode. First season. Well, I mean, even the first episode of the first season. I mean, that reached out of the TV and grabbed you in a way that very little television content does, and it was a combination of setting and just. It was a flawlessly written pilot that tells you everything you need to know, nothing you don't, and you get to the end, and you absolutely have to watch the next episode.
Yeah, that's really the thing. What I remember when I watched the show, like I said, watching on DVD, I'd never really binged a show, and this is the first show I truly binged. I watched all of the DVDs in one sitting, and made it all the way through it. So I mean, I watched all of season 1 in one sitting. The biggest thing that I had sort of with it was a very well executed show. And one of the things I've been doing just because of this stuff now around it, I've gone back and read some of the reviews of season 1 and season 2 that were written contemporaneously with it. And I thought a lot of them had sort of great comments, which was, it was a show that leaned into mystery. It came out around the time when there were a number of things like that, which were kind of these mysterious, you don't know what's going on type of shows. That was kind of its own genre at the time, like 10 years ago, which I think we kind of forget. And it just did it extraordinarily well. And that was really the thing from, again, the first episode and a lot of what we saw is you just had no idea what was going on. It was fascinating. The idea, because it's, you see hints of the Upside Down. You obviously see hints of the Demogorgon, but don't really know what's going on.
They did the great job of not showing the shark. You don't really get to see the whole thing until the very end.
Yeah, what you instead just see is sort of Will is gone. And something has happened and nobody's quite figuring out what's going on. And you see the typical sort of small town reaction to it.
You got the crazy lady who's
his mom.
Winona Ryder plays the mom. She's kind of regarded as crazy. She's clearly had some mental illnesses in her life.
She's working huge amounts.
Working a bunch, stressed out. She's been left by her husband. They're kind of the poors, out in the woods. And so her son gets taken, and of course nobody takes it all that seriously. Yeah.
And that's, again, sort of the good setup, but immediately there's vastly more going on with this.
Well, that's what they do well. Like, we, the audience, know because we saw the monster in the first 5 minutes of the show. So we know it's real, or at least we're supposed to think it's real. Yeah. So right away you establish that tension. We know just enough. There is a monster, And it took him. We know that much, right? So we know as the audience, and so the tension comes from watching other characters figure their way through this.
And there's kind of a bit about how each season kind of leans into a book. I mean, season 1 is It. Everybody kind of knows that, and with Stephen King's It, that's kind of the same way It works as well. Certain people are aware there's the monster, the kids are aware there's the monster, and nobody else quite believes them. And again, even there, you don't really know what the monster is. You just know they're encountering stuff. So it plays into well-established horror, tropes. And it does it very, very well. And what I think is interesting, again, reading a lot of the contemporaneous accounts that people commented about, this in many respects was the show that made Netflix.
Absolutely,
and really sort of commented about the fact that Netflix could be a content house. Now, it wasn't their first hit. As I said, Orange is the New Black and House of Cards had both come out before this did. But it kind of did the thing because, one, they released it all at once, and the whole sort of binge-worthy schedule.
Which still nobody else does.
Yeah. And, kind of said, hey, maybe there's a new model here. And that's really one of the things the show had. And I think the reason I'm bringing that up is I think that's a part of the reason why the fans are reacting negatively now, is because the show was essentially the absolute bleeding edge, pardon the pun, to, when it came out. And it's not anymore. Now, part of that's just because it's 10 years old.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
But at the same time, it's one of those where you had this thing that basically came in and said, hey, it was in some sense the vanguard of a new model of TV and really the model of streaming.
Well, if you think about like season 1, what made it so great? Is the plot particularly imaginative and innovative? Not really.
Not really. It's
recycling a lot of horror and suspense tropes that we've seen done a million times. You've got the ragtag group of kids in a small town. It's very Deary, Maine.
Yep.
It's very E.T. It's very Goonies. All these sort of elements. We talked about this in a prior episode, and we're going to have an episode coming up on how the 80s is indeed a unique decade. We're going to talk about that.
Talk about how some legal issues affected the 80s that actually changed its culture.
We're really excited about that one. But, at its core, I mean, it's not really doing anything that... What was that one? We called it 8mm, but that's not what it was. Super 8?
Super 8.
Yeah, we called it 8mm. That's a different film.
It's a very different film.
In a prior episode. But Super 8 was the one. It was also about like kids encountering some kind of weird paranormal phenomenon. So, I mean, that had just come out a couple years before this. So this is a tried and true...
Cloverfield is kind of around that time, if I remember rightly.
This is a formula that we know works, but what they did so well with it is how well they executed it in a longer story format where it didn't wear out its welcome, and they had enough narrative space in both the format and the platform and just within the story itself to give a relatively large cast a lot of room to develop and breathe.
And one of the things I also think they did that was important is the episodes were not all the same length.
Yeah.
And that was really novel. I mean, it was either you did hour-long episodes or you did a movie.
Yeah.
But this was the ability to always end on a cliffhanger, and a cliffhanger that could kind of be anywhere. And then you immediately move from it. And they kind of have
you don't have commercials to sell.
Yeah.
You don't have a runtime you have to meet. This is the freedom that the platform gives you.
And you kind of had the formula where it was the end on the, you end on the cliffhanger. You start the next episode immediately at the end of the cliffhanger, and you run that until the credit crawl. And basically the cliffhanger is resolved by the credit crawl, and then we get into the next episode, which was an incredibly watchable format and binge-worthy format because it was, hey, the cliffhanger, I want to start the next episode. I'll start the next episode. Okay, we're in the credit crawl. Well, I just may as well keep watching.
Yeah.
And that hit me because that was the way we happened to watch the very last episode that's out. So it's episode 3 of book 2. Was we did that. We watched the second episode and we're like, hey, let's just resolve the Max cliffhanger and the Holly cliffhanger at the end, just so we know where it goes, and then we'll stop at the credit crawl. And it was really easy to do because it's like, okay, we know everything's resetting at the credit crawl. And that was kind of a new thing to do that, of the idea of saying, hey, all of a sudden we're gonna make these cliffhanger episodes immediately restart at the end. So again, I think what you really looked at,
but then to your point, we lost that a little bit in season 5 because of how they're structuring it.
Yeah, though I think they did kind of purposely do it, but it's just in some sense the cliffhangers were a bit forced. We kind of, did we all know that Max was coming back? Of course, we all knew Max was. We've known that for a season,
Well, so the cliffhanger at the end of part 1, where Will gets Vecna's powers, like. That whole sequence felt like it was placed there because the writers knew it was the cliffhanger, not because the plot of the story called for it. Because Vecna walks out of the portal, wrecks the place. We shoot pointlessly at a bunch of Gorgons and dogs. Will gets the powers, and Vecna just turns around and walks away.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no point to any of that. Like, everything we were leading up to was gathering the kids at the military complex. We try to sneak them out. It doesn't work. Vecna gets them all anyway. None of it made any difference in the plot other than to have the Will is now a sorcerer moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So it felt to me like some of the things we saw in the Star Wars sequels where the writing has become too self-aware of the writing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like why are there gas masks on the Millennium Falcon 40 years into the future? Because we, the audience, have seen them and want to see them again. You know, so why does Vecna come out and do this? Why is Will the sorcerer? Because we, the audience, want more 80s nostalgia and allegory, and so we have to have that. It just feels like the story is not being driven by character anymore. I keep describing it as plotty. It's super, super plotty.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you sort of bumped into with that is that they also had the problem that their plot got off the rails, arguably. You know, when you look at season 1, it was very compact. We had one monster.
It's a simple story.
You know, the one monster isn't even that terrifying. It's just a normal human-sized monster.
It just kind of seems like an animal. It doesn't seem intelligent, really. It seems like it's just hunting and scavenging for food.
Yeah, and then you have the whole thing of like, what the hell's 11? You know, and why does she have these psychic abilities? What's going on in the lab? You know, all the kind of stuff associated with that. And so there's just all these unknowns that you're trying to figure out, and how does all this stuff fit together?
Yeah.
And you get the fact that it can be very lethal. You have a number of people who die, you know, early on, and even characters that you kind of like the owner of the diner and, you know, stuff like that.
Barb.
You have Barb. Let's not forget about Barb. Justice for Barb. But, you sort of had all that kind of stuff, you know, happen, you know, around it. When you get into season 2, they kind of continue to play off of that. They needed a new baddie. And it
has to be bigger. You always have to escalate the stakes.
It has to be baddie. But it was also one that it was like, okay, we're getting the fact that like the Demogorgon's just a servant. Okay, so we got a big nasty thing, you know, in conjunction with this, but it's still in the Upside Down. It's still sort of similar. Yes, it can affect things, and it can affect things a little more directly. You have the weird interaction with Will, and the fact that it can it can infect people, and it somehow infected Will. But then you've also got the idea that like Will doesn't quite realize everything he's doing. You know, the fact that he's got all these powers, and like his whole spying thing, you know, that happens inadvertently with him, you know, telling them where they are, and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, you know, season 2 kind of still works. Then, to me, and this is the sort of thing with it, I really think it went off the rails in season 3.
I agree. We were talking about this morning. Season 3 feels like where they lost the thread. And it's not that it's objectively bad, but there was a dedication to a sort of simple realism in season 1, and to a large extent in season 2, that season 3 just completely abandoned.
Yeah.
Like, you could season 1, you could look at, it's a monster story. Okay, there's a monster. The government's created a monster. It got loose. It's hurting people. And now there's a government conspiracy and cover up while ordinary people try to get their lives back together and recover their lost loved ones. It's a pretty simple garden variety monster story. Season 2 takes that and does it again. It's a little sillier with the tunnels and things like that, but okay. And then in season 3, the Russians somehow built a sprawling underground complex in Indiana, the middle of the country, and nobody noticed.
Yeah, simply because the mayor was in on it.
But Indiana's a seismic zone. Like, there's the Wabash, you know, seismic zone. Like, surely somebody would have noticed. Like, it's absurd to the point where it's hard to suspend your disbelief, especially when you consider the time frame. Yeah. Like, they built this in a year. You couldn't build that above ground in a year. Like,
yeah, there's also a lot of very funny sort of, you know, intentionally or unintentional moments. The example I actually sort of give it with, and I've heard a lot of people comment about this, it's kind of what happened with James Bond. Season 2 is Sean Connery. Season 3 is Roger Moore.
Yeah.
You know, when you get into Roger Moore, Bond gets a little tropey. Now, in Bond, in some sense, they played it on purpose. Like, they kind of did that. But then you kind of have, you know, Timothy Dalton coming in and saying, no, let's go back to what actually he was in Ian Fleming, which is not a nice guy, you know, and stuff like that. And you had this thing where it was like, to me, that was I think that's a very accurate statement of the idea of like season 1, season 2 is Sean Connery, season 3 is Roger Moore. It's not that it's not enjoyable. I actually like Roger Moore as 007 purposely because he's that slightly weird.
It's different.
But it's very different, and it's definitely not as edgy. It's definitely not as gritty. And that's what you kind of got from season 3 is it's not as edgy. It's not as gritty. It also, the threat is more real world. I mean, that one of the comments I made with it, I remember saying at the time, I'm not sure you ever see the Upside Down in season 3.
I was thinking about that. I don't remember. I think you maybe do at some point, but most of the action takes place in the basement of the mall, which is a Russian spy facility. Yeah. Or
in the Russian prison
that's season 4 is the Russian prison.
Yeah, okay.
Or it's the flesh monster that's slowly assembling itself with Max's brother's help.
Yeah, that's right. And you sort of got the idea, and you got like the factory or the old like factory,
that old abandoned
the warehouse, whatever it is, that's got Billy in it. Yeah, I did just mesh season 4 and season 3 there. But yeah, you sort of got that. And again, it's, the monsters are all flesh and blood or people. They're zombies, but they're people.
Well, and when you had the 80s illusions in those series, they were more cleverly done than what we're seeing now, I think. And the one that jumps out in season 3 is they do the Phoebe Kate scene, except with Billy walking out to be the lifeguard, and all the moms are like spraying themselves, and they're playing that Cars song. Was it Moving in Stereo?
Yeah.
That was, the minute that scene started and I heard that like the beginning of Moving in Stereo, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was laughing just thinking about it because it was so clever and so well done. It was funny. It was light, especially given what we know happens to Billy at the end. It was nice for him to get that little like weird moment. It was cute. It was a cute reference that wasn't overdone. And I feel like now, in season 5 especially, the book is A Wrinkle in Time. Yeah. And the allegories feel really forced and inapt.
And they're in your face.
Yeah.
Now, I think part of the one problem with it is also that you have to kind of understand Wrinkle in Time, because I remember reading Wrinkle in Time, but I don't remember it at all.
See, I actually read it a couple years ago to my kids, so I remember it a little bit better, and I saw the movie, which was not amazing. But yeah, so there's a lot of reference, leaving Camazotz and the evil brain and stuff that they just don't map very well to what's going on in the plot.
And again, like the stuff with it is subtle. You get all the clowns in the baby's room. You get these like really subtle sort of references to the fact that, yes, it's it. You have things associated with it, like around that. The composition basically of the group is very similar, And so it's like, okay, all this stuff fits.
It's more structural than just directly saying, hey, remember it? Guys, remember it? Remember it? You liked it. This is just like that.
And I think in season 3, the biggest problem they got into is that the 80s became, like, referencing the 80s became its own thing.
Yeah, like the never-ending story thing at the end. Like, I don't know.
Really, I have to admit, to me, is probably one of the worst seasons of the entire series.
I remember when they got to the end and Dustin is being asked to sing the song from Neverending Story. I just rolled my eyes. Like, obviously, I liked that movie when I was a kid too. We're all scarred for life from Artax drowning in the swamp of sorrow. But like, it got to that point, and like my kids loved it. They were like, it was like an anthem to them. They were so excited to hear that part. Thought it was so cool. I just kind of rolled my eyes at it. I'm like, oh, this is so. It's so, like, I don't know, on the nose and contrived, and it just didn't feel like it emerged authentically from the story. They, like, wrote towards that point as opposed to letting it emerge from the narrative.
It also was a complete waste of time since they desperately needed the code because the Russians could break it anytime. Nope, we got to have the song. To me, it's the musical song break. We know that they can't possibly attack while they're in the middle of the song.
Yeah.
Which is what happens in a musical. People make fun of it in a musical. Now, in a musical, to my mind, it works. There's a lot of things you can get away with on a stage you can't get away with in a TV show. And that was kind of the thing there, is it was like, look, we have the Russians about to break in and we have to sing the song from Neverending Story in order to get the code. Do we not understand the urgency here? You know, that was kind of thing. And to me, that was the biggest problem with season 3, is it had these kind of fun moments, but the show wasn't supposed to be fun.
Yeah, they're misplaced in the plot. Like the Billy moment was well placed. It was a 45-second scene that didn't build up to anything. It didn't lead to anything. It was just cute, for a moment. And you kind of thought back to Fast Times at Ridgemont High and had a little moment of nostalgia. But then the show moves on, whereas there was this giant build-up to the never-ending story thing that I just didn't land for me. And Season 5's got a lot more of that. Season 5 is doing a lot of throat clearing before the end of the series. And sort of resolving personal arcs and plot lines. And they're just being shoved into awkward places in the narrative where they really don't fit the action.
And that was the thing I had with it, is I felt like Season 3 kind of got to the humor thing behind it, And again, it wasn't that I didn't like season 3. It was just a different show. And it wasn't the mystery sort of half horror, half thriller that the first 2 seasons were. Then in my mind, season 4 starts with what is a first episode, just like season 1. Mm-hmm. Like suddenly you're like, oh my God, what just happened? Who the hell is this Vecna guy? Stuff like that. Now I happen to know a little bit about it from just bumping into spoilers, but it was one of those things where I was like, okay, I have no idea what's going on right now. Once again, this is all changed. Like everything's around it. Plus we have Elle having lost her powers. And we're like, okay, so now what does this mean?
Yeah.
And we now have them being thrown in California.
Yeah, the group gets split up because the party's gotten too big. Yep. So classic Lord of the Rings, split them up. There's too many people.
Elle's being tormented. Like she's, in terrible shape. You've got the whole Elle and Mike are not doing well together. There's just this massive amount of sort of interpersonal conflict, which is saying the group isn't working. And suddenly we have this just horrifically bad new bad guy showing up.
And we've introduced 2 new characters. We've got Eddie to deal with now. We've got, I forget his name now, but the pot smoking pizza delivery.
Yeah, surfer boy pizza dude. Yeah, I remember. And I have to admit, Eddie's one of those characters I'm really torn in, because you commented on the fact that really liking Eddie. I really liked Eddie. I definitely knew people just like Eddie, and I liked Eddie as a character. I didn't like him though until the last episode. I really just found Eddie annoying. Part of it was because I knew too many people like Eddie. Like that was the thing sort of I bumped into.
That was definitely like a type in high school.
Yeah, and to me, it was the thing where I'm like, do we need him? Like, we have too many other characters already. And I was really looking at it I think it was episode 2 where I kind of looked at it and I'm like, I have the feeling Eddie's not surviving this season because we have too many characters already.
Yeah.
And they can't get rid of any of the others.
Yeah.
So, like, we're introducing somebody because somebody's got to die.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of unfortunate because Eddie's kind of a fun potential thing where it's going. And then what really bothered me in going into season 4 is it felt like they were keeping a little bit of that stereotypical 80s feel again. We have the roller rink, though admittedly I was like, the roller rink was a good place for that to play out because it kind of fit the way roller rinks actually worked.
That again made sense in the context of the plot.
The other thing that really bothered me was the whole jocks. I really did not like the jocks at all. Because it was one of these things where I'm like, to me, these are the characters who are supposed to be here because they're dumb and don't know what's going on, so that in the last episode, they can mess with everything.
Yeah.
It's exactly what they did.
Happens, yeah.
And I'm like, we don't need them, stuff like that. We really could have just focused on the Vecna plot. We could have focused on the idea of like these kids are getting killed. What the hell's going on? We didn't necessarily need the surfer boy plot, but it was kind of like, okay, I appreciated the idea that like Jonathan's kind of a stoner. Like he's not doing, like people are not dealing with this well. Coming out of this.
And that part made sense.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, and we know we need to get the gang back together because the evil's coming. And so that was the kind of thing where I had with it is what I liked about season 4 is it really felt like we're driving because of the fact that we need to get back to what season 1 and 2 were, but we've got to resolve the loose ends. So we've got to go to Russia because we let on the fact that Hop's in Russia. Okay, we got to go deal with Hop. That's really just an excuse to get all the adults out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing that season really does very well is get all of the parents in Russia where they can't help.
Including all the parent-adjacent characters, Jonathan and Nancy. Get them out of there. They're too old and they know too much.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. I'm like, this is working. And again, to me, season 4 felt like it really flowed. It felt like it was hampered and kind of hamstrung because of season 3. But at the end of season 4, I'm like, this is good. We've gotten rid of the Russian plot.
Arrived at a good spot, yeah.
Yeah. Now, they've introduced a few other weird things in it, and a couple of which, I'm going to tell you is one of my spoiler things behind it. Like, okay, what the hell's the green stuff the Russians have, which we never talked about? Why are there particles? What's the deal with the particles, like, reanimating the demi-dogs? And the big thing that really bothered me in conjunction with season 4 is how the hell tough is a demi-dog? We in season 1, the most that was ever used against the demi-dog was the slingshot. We really have no idea how
Again,
tough.
an it reference.
We really have no idea how tough the demi-dog is. We know it's tough. I think it does get shot a couple times and things like that and sort of stands back up, but it's nothing major until 11 takes it out. And it's like, okay, there's the Demigorgon, not the demi-dog. When we have the demi-dogs, we have a couple scenes where it's like, okay, the kids are having trouble taking him out, but again, they're not shooting him that much, they're not necessarily dealing with it, and there's a lot of them. It's much more the fact that it's not so much there's one, there's a lot of them. And sort of things like that. And in the end, okay, you get Hops kind of, okay, when they're close range, the shotgun's effective, it at least blasts them off. You get the fact that maybe they're kind of unkillable, but okay, that's, it kind of works. In season 3, they become invincible or incredibly vulnerable depending on the plot needs.
Which is also what season 5 is doing.
The example of the one I had with it is Hop steals an AK-47. He finds the demi-dog, which is basically being, dissected on the thing. He kills it with one shot to the head. Versus the same demi-dogs, like 18 Russians with the exact same AK-47s don't even slow it down. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like,
well, we got that in season 5 too, where they, the Demigorgon comes to steal Derek. Again, more new characters we're dealing with. Although I do enjoy Derek.
I like Derek, but it's also one of those things where Derek to me is too much of a trope.
It's very tropey, and right?
I think the only reason we needed Derek is because we need a new spy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the reason the reason Derek's there is so that one of the kids Henry doesn't know is against him. I'm like, that's the only reason Derek's there, is because we need that. What I did like about Derek is he's the stereotypical kid jerk at that age.
He is. He's just such an asshole.
He is. I mean, dipshit Derek is just exactly accurate. And I also like the fact that dipshit Derek is completely manipulable by all the other characters.
Everybody is messing with him.
And that's what I like so well about it is he works very well as a trope. It's just, did we really need the trope?
Well, that scene, they go to all this planning and they buy all this stuff to set all these traps for the Demogorgon. It comes in, they fight it off with like rakes and blowguns or blow torches and
very Home Alone.
Very Home Alone. And then it gets hurt and it runs away. And then,
but they have the tracker on it.
They have the tracker on it. And then now 2 episodes later, we have the shootout at the Mac, and there's 3 Demogorgons, and we have the entire military unloading napalm, flamethrowers.
Keep in mind that the Humvee that drives up has a 50 cal on its roof. 30 cal or 50 cal.
They don't make a dent in it. Nothing.
Nothing will hurt it. And I mean, they're not even dented. Like, that's the thing.
They're not even slowing them down.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing where it's, again, it's just, how are we, how are these things invincible? How tough are they? And that's the big thing right now. Is
what do we always say with genre films? You have to know what the rules are, and you have to follow them. And when you don't, the real world is easy because we already know what the rules are. So you just if you film a real life show, it's not that hard to do. But if you're going to have supernatural stuff, once you have magic, you have to have rules, and this is basically magic.
Yeah, and that's the other one. Is the example is it's Hopper's, and if I'm going to make the reference, because I do think it was done on purpose, Highlander moment with the Demogorgon in the Russian prison. They die if you chop their heads off. Oh, you mean Highlander? And that was exactly the sort of thing I had from that. Is it was okay. We've got this potential rule here, but it's none of this is it's not flowing. It's not having sense. And that was my big problem with season 4 is it sort of started to introduce the fact that the rules were being broken for plot purposes.
Yeah.
Even though I think it did a good job of saying, to me, really what I got out of season 4 is we know there's going to be a season 5 and it's the end. We need to drive season 4 back to where season 1 was because we want to end the show on a high note.
I felt like season 3 kind of was a low point, and season 4 was a return to form. Now, the reviews and ratings don't bear that out. The fans did not love season 4, but I felt like tonally and in terms of thematically, it was a little bit closer to what made season 1 work, with the plot being more advanced. And you're right, setting up season 5 at the end. But season 5 to me has really, I mean, I'm entertained.
Yes.
It's not bad TV. It's still better than a lot of what's out there to watch. It just feels like there's a lot of missed opportunity and a lot of structural mistakes being made. And a couple of scenes jump out to me. One is that I like the way it starts with Rock and Robin at the radio station, and they kind of reorient us on where we are in the plot.
And actually, I think they do an incredibly good job of explaining the whole thing with the military quarantine, which didn't exist until that point in time, in like 3 minutes.
It was very effective, right?
It was incredibly effective.
But then we get a whole bunch of sequences, and this keeps happening over and over and over, where we put the characters in peril, okay? Classic action setup with good writing technique.
Yeah.
And then the peril just stops so that 2 characters can have a heartfult moment together.
And then it continues after they're done.
After the heartfelt moment, decisions are made, and then the peril resumes. Can I confront the peril? No, it's too perilous.
Yeah.
So this happens with Max is a good example of that. When Max and Holly are finally about to escape the dream world, Max finds her portal that lets her out.
Yep.
And rather than run to the portal,
and we also have an incredibly tense scene, which is this doesn't work for Holly.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, what's Holly going to do? How's she going to get out of here? So now she's trapped in this awful hellscape, which is where the mansion is in the Upside Down. How does she get out? Because only Max can get out. And you really get Holly's been betrayed. Max has to have known this. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And
I did not think they're going to be able to just open a portal for Holly. I didn't see that part coming. But what's been set up though is that Max already found the portal once.
Yep.
And just because the music happened to stop playing, the song ran out, the portal closed, and she couldn't escape. So we've been given this information that Max has been there for 2 years in her mind, has been alone and suffering and struggling to get out and missed her only opportunity. Now she finally has it again. The music's playing. Who knows how long it's going to keep going? She can see through the portal. Lucas is carrying her body, and rather than sprint so she doesn't lose the opportunity again, she stops to build up Holly's courage, which is very giving of her, but it didn't make any sense in that context.
Yeah.
And the minute that happened, I knew the portal. We're not going to have a moment where the portal was about to close. We're going to have a close call where she has to run and catch it, because that would make her seem incredibly stupid for sitting there and having this conversation that was completely unnecessary.
And to my mind, what that was is, we need to set stuff up for Holly for somewhere later in the season. That's we have to give basic stuff that set Holly up for later.
We have to explain her necklace and make it relevant, so then they can take it away in the next scene.
Even though we already knew that the D&D character was important, and it's what she was looking like and the way she was dressed in that scene. I mean, let's face it, she was dressed exactly like her D&D character, and let's say Max was dressed like a rogue, which is what she plays. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, this makes perfect sense. So there's a thing behind it. My real thing with it was, and what I did get from the comment with Max, is that Max realized it's not the music, it's the fact that she's in love with Lucas that's getting her through. And it was so Lucas is basically risking himself with the demidogs playing the music, and it doesn't matter. And she's watching all of this through the portal. Can you just get on with this already? And I had exactly the same kind of thing you did. Is I'm like, it would have been one thing if it would have been, Holly, you can't come through this portal. It's not going to work for you. You need to find your way, and to have Holly do something with even potentially note the necklace or something like that, and be like, I want to be brave. Her portal could have opened.
Yeah.
That could have been
I would have had them both sprint to the portal. Max goes through, not realizing it's not going to work for Holly, and she's stranded. Now you have an interesting plot development for Max. She feels like she left her behind and when she couldn't get out. But I had the same thought. Like, Max should have known this whole time you're going to wake up wherever your body is, and Holly has been taken. So, why did Max wait until that moment to say, oh, by the way, thanks for coming with me, but you're stuck?
Yeah, you're stuck. Now, admittedly, she's kind of going, you get the impression they're looking for Holly's portal, not for Max's portal initially, but then they kind of find Max's portal. And again, I think the thing you really kind of got into that is, again, it felt too much like we knew Max had to get back. We needed Holly to not get back.
But what are the stakes? Holly wakes up, she escapes from Vecna, she digs the rocks through the weird alien planet we don't know about. She falls, and then Vecna just summons her back and then throws her back in the same place again. So she's right back where she started. Nothing's really happened or changed.
Vecna totally could have just caught her in that hellscape and taken her back.
Yeah.
We didn't need it. Now, part of the reason that we needed it, arguably, is to explain the fact that there's the world on the other side. We kind of needed that as, what it was.
There's other ways to explore that. Yeah. It just feels like kind of hackneyed. They're going to say this in a way that's going to sound mean. It feels like George Lucas prequel writing. Here's what the plot needs right this second. Let's get to it and get it done. And we're not going to go and spend a lot of time really polishing this script up and making it shine.
And again, that's the big thing I really got from season 5. And my comments so far in season 5, I've enjoyed season 5. I actually find it quite enjoyable.
I don't want to make it sound like I'm not enjoying watching it.
But my comment with it is
missed opportunities.
It's missed opportunities, and it's not Stranger Things ending. It's too basic of an ending. And people have commented about the fact it's the same problem Game of Thrones had. It was too good for too long that it couldn't end itself.
Yeah, there's too much to wrap up all at once. So here's the big thing. Like season 1, at the core, it was interesting and captivating because it set up a cool mystery.
Yeah.
Really a cool mystery.
And it resolves a decent portion of it.
It did, yeah. So what's the mystery in season 5?
Yeah, there isn't one.
I guess, there's a couple things.
Well, there is actually one.
What's the other planet? I don't think we're going to learn anything about it. There's not enough time. The Abyss, yeah, where Tiamat lives. That'll be the next thing. There'll be some Tiamat type creature.
So I was looking at stuff on Demogorgon. I didn't realize that actually the Demogorgon rules the Abyss.
Was it really?
Yeah, which that was interesting.
Okay, so we got the Abyss. We're going to learn what was in the case that baby Vecna finds in Utah, or wherever the hell he is. And obviously we talked about this. He got shot in the hand, so his blood can fall on whatever's in there and infect him.
So one of the things we were talking about is it's a few sort of predictions. We go
let's quit dunking on the show.
I'm actually going to give the one line with it. I love this line. So I happened to read right after I saw this thing. I subscribed to the Atlantic, and one of the Atlantic writers wrote an article called "Where Stranger Things Lost Itself." And one of the things I happened to catch in that, I don't know if it was intended, where Stranger Things lost itself. It's the same problem of Lost.
Had the same problem.
The same problem. So this is written by Shirley Lee, and I loved the last sentence she put in here, and basically commenting about the amazing thing Stranger Things did was it's season 1, but the last line of her article, and I just think it was really, really accurate to what I feel about season 5, which is 8 years later, the show isn't making viewers nostalgic or giving them nightmares. It's just telling them what happens next. And I was like, that's exactly accurate. It feels like the show needs to resolve itself, and that's what they're trying to do, is resolve itself. Now, I give them a lot of credit for actually doing it, which Lost didn't do.
No.
That was the problem. The Lost didn't resolve itself at all.
The nostalgia's not there because it's not set in the 80s anymore. It's mostly set in this other world, this quarantine town. That doesn't feel like that could have been any time.
Yeah.
That could have been set in the 1930s or now.
There's a lot of comments of a lot of the scenes in it feel 2025 and not enough 1986.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I kind of agree with that. It's a lot of it really feels too modern.
Other than the soundtrack, you know?
And admittedly, that's the one thing the show has consistently done incredibly well, is the use of 80s music to make reference to things happening. They spared no expense.
Those are some expensive songs.
But they also fit so well in so many places. And, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this just works. And I love the fact that, we have Tiffany as like the, sort of the, for, our new girl introduction. Let's have Tiffany. And it's like, okay, that's just so appropriate, so what it is.
I'd explain to my kids who that was.
But even like, when Robin uses the records to explain what people are like, why was that necessary? Like, she didn't need the records. Like, that wasn't a necessary thing to do it. And so it just kind of felt forced.
And also, as a vinyl dork, she like pulls the records out of the sleeves and then puts her fingers all over the grooves. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's gonna get dunked on.
So yeah, but so that was the thing. So I think one of the things we can do is we can give some speculation of what we think was, as much as I have enjoyed the show, I am really looking forward to the finale.
So I'm going to say this. Kirk has the speculation. My only prediction I've got is that this is going to end in, I think, a way that is good enough, kind of like the end of Star Wars Episode 9, but ultimately just doesn't really do much. I just can't foresee them wrapping all this up in a coherent, satisfying way where you think, boy, that was just an incredibly brilliant way to finish this up. So we're going to come up with Kirk's going to come up with some ideas here, but I'm just going to go on record as saying I think Kirk's ideas are way more interesting than what's going to actually happen.
So I had a few ideas. Now, one of the things with it, one of the first speculations I had, I've always wondered what the Upside Down is and the thing behind it. My first speculation was, and I know this is a common internet one, we haven't mentioned on the show, is the idea that effectively it's a psychic realm that's created by, something like that. One of the things that always got to me was the fact that the Demogorgon in the first season, and it occurs later on, they tend to have attacks from the Upside Down when there's strife. And Vecna follows that in season 4. He's after the people who are having these awful emotional things, having major psychological issues. And there's been a lot of talk of the fact that it plays off fear. He plays off fear. And it's like, okay, that works. You have fear, you have strife, all these kind of things coming through. With it. I think that's a really sort of, interesting component. So what my original take was, and I still think it's actually an interesting take, is the fact that the Upside Down was effectively a psychically created realm. It was created by the women that were essentially a part of the MK Ultra product. And really, and my original phase was, the Mind Flayer was Eleven's mom. And she was essentially racked because of the problems with the electroshock therapy. It destroyed her. That's why there's all this electricity, why she's a tornado, sort of the things like that. She effectively was the Mind Flayer behind it. I think that's well established to not be the case. And I assume her mom is not coming back. Now, part of that may just be because of the fact they obviously couldn't get the actress. There was no reason to do it.
Recast the role if they had to. They recast Holly for this season. That's true.
But I think you bumped into some stuff like that, it was, okay, they haven't had that. So my kind of take has been, where are we going with this? Again, I listen to fan theories and find things. And the one that we had with it, both my son and I commented about this when it happened. When we get into the whatever Henry's memory, and I'm probably going to call him Henry in this as opposed to Vecna, because I do think one of the issues is I think Henry and Vecna are two different people. They just occupy the same body. And that's actually something which is going to be brought up. How much it matters doesn't necessarily matter, but I think it's the idea that they're sort of two sides of the same coin, something like that, is the stuff in Henry's memory. And there's a couple of, I think, interesting things behind it. One of which is, why does Max go to the scene in the high school and see the Oklahoma musical flyer, which lists Hopper, a bunch of the other characters in conjunction with it. Now, what I've since found out, we referenced at the beginning, there's the Broadway musical, which is set in that. That is an important aspect. I think it's probably a stage show. It's not actually a musical. Broadway stage show, which is set. That's an important aspect of it, is them in the high school. It sets up Henry as to who he is, sets up a love interest for him, sets up the concerns, sets stuff up with, why he came to Hawkins. Okay, some of that is probably just referencing that, and it didn't mean anything other than that. It was just a tag for the people who knew it. At the same time, it may be important. But we have the issue where we get into the mine shaft, and what do we see in the mine shaft? And the thing that I kind of bumped into with it is we know it has to do with the Boy Scout uniform. He kept the Boy Scout uniform. He kept the telescope, behind it. But why doesn't he freak out when he sees, her wearing his neckerchief? Mm-hmm. If this is scary to him, why doesn't that bother him? That she's found this stuff and is using it. But we have nothing going on with that. We have none of this stuff sort of occurring. And so we see the scene with it. They get down in there. I think it's a great scene where you suddenly have the guy draw the gun on them, and they say, "Wait, how can they say they can't see us?" And it's because Henry's standing behind them. I thought that was a great sort of executed scene. That was well done. But what I found out is apparently from the Broadway stage show, that scene is in the Broadway stage show. It is essentially a Russian spy who has stolen stuff from Brenner's lab. We don't necessarily know what. That's presumably what's in the case. But one of the comments that was made by a fan in it, I think it's actually a very relevant point, is why is Henry shot in the hand? Because he doesn't have to be shot. He could have, the guy has to fire the shot at him. There's no question about that to introduce the peril, but he could have missed. And it doesn't affect Henry. Like he doesn't collapse from it or, freak out because of it. He then attacks the guy and kills him. Okay. We had peril to begin with. And the comment with it is it's because he has to be bleeding. And so since he's bleeding, when he opens the case, whatever's in the case can get into him. That's the introduction of first Mind Flayer. Again, this is another fan's theory. I really liked that. I thought it was a really intriguing concept. And what I went from there is effectively, what if it's not Vecna's blood that creates all this? What if it's actually the Mind Flayer particles? Mm-hmm. And that created Vecna in the first place too. It ties into the stuff with the Broadway show about the idea of the Philadelphia Project, the fact that Brenner's father was is the person who the captain who brings the stuff back with him. We really have the Mind Flayer. It also then answers the question, which I thought was a very strange scene. Why are there Mind Flayer particles in Russia? Mm-hmm. Because they're everywhere. They've caught them. They're associated with them. The Mind Flayer particles are far more pervasive than they are. What we effectively have is essentially a blood virus. All the people have it. It also then explains why do they get nosebleeds when they use the powers? It's a blood virus. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the kind of thing sort of with it. So I really got into this idea that I think what we're going to end up with is basically Henry is exposed to the Mind Flayer and this other world from the wormhole way back then. Somehow Brenner finds out about that. That's why he seeks him out. He builds the thing, but he needs to break through into the wormhole. And the whole idea he's got is to basically build these sites to break through into the wormhole, to do exactly what Elle did, because he can't break in, behind it. We still don't know. The other scene we don't know is why the heck does he have the inhibitor chip or whatever the hell it is that keeps him from having his powers? Why does Brenner give that to him, and what is it?
Yeah.
We don't know what that thing is. That's obviously that occurs in season 4. That's something they have to have kind of known, and we're going to use at the end. I think it's going to be important. But that's my take behind it, is what we're going to find out is there is some blood transfusion stuff going on here, but I don't think it's what 8 is saying it's going to be. I don't think that they're trying to use, Vecna's blood or 8's blood or 11's blood. I think the idea behind it is it's something going into their blood, which is doing it. And a couple of the reasons why I think this goes from it. Number one, we know that MK Ultra, the mom goes to the thing and is in a sensory deprivation tank. Mm-hmm. She's in the water tank. She's in Nina, to use the term, sort of later on that's used. We also know every time the kids go into the sensory deprivation tank, they're given injections. So we have the idea that, okay, they get something with it. When does Elle lose her powers? She loses her powers because the Mind Flayer grabs hold of her and the stuff congeals effectively into the polywog. The same thing that happens to Will. We know he gets particles. That pipe gives you particles because we see it in conjunction with Holly. So they congeal into a polywog, kind of become a physical thing. So we're like, okay, we've got this idea that like this stuff's kind of in them. They're fighting against it. It's coming out of them. There's all these kind of elements of stuff associated with that. To me, it feels like that's potentially where they're trying to go with this. And so the reason she gets her powers back is not because of exposure to the thing, because of exposure to Vecna. She gets her powers back because she's getting the injections of whatever it is that gives her powers. That's exactly what it is that's giving her powers. That's the element of it. She's always getting those injections. She's always having it. I'm also going to speculate. This is my one piece of speculation. I think Nina is an acronym. There's a reason it's called Nina, and we don't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
I think Nina's an acronym, and when we find that out, it's going to give something away.
The piece I can't figure out is what is Henry afraid of in the cave? I think it's exposure.
I think it's exposure to the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think that's set up all that well, right? Like he seems more powerful than the Mind Flayer, so why is he afraid of that.
I think he's controlled by it. And again, I think that's the idea of Henry and Vecna being two different people. I think Vecna, when we see Vecna, we see the guy, we see him with all the stuff on him and things like that. It's Vecna. When we see Mr. What's-It, that's Vecna being human. We don't see Henry all that often.
Not in season 5.
Not in season 5. When we see Henry, it's more him being in the thing. We also get into the fact of like, what does Henry do as 01? He kills all the other people. He's killing his progeny. He knows if you follow through 8's idea, he knows what he's doing. He's trying to get rid of everybody because they're all dangerous and he knows it. And so I think we're going to get into that kind of stuff. There's a lot going on with this. There's a lot of references. One of the things I thought was a really unsubtle comment, Holly has a whole heck of a lot of rainbows in her room. When you first see Holly's room, there's rainbows everywhere. So references to the rainbow room. We're seeing a lot of sort of those kind of references. I really feel like the Duffer Brothers have two ways they're going to go with this. We're either going to see just a resolution. We're going to see a big battle scene and just a resolution. Or we're going to literally see them blow the lid off of this whole thing. And all of a sudden it's going to become, there's references they're going to tie up. Whether they intended them to begin with or not, we're going to have a massive tie-up of loose ends, which is actually going to potentially be very satisfying.
Well, I'm going to give you a couple of predictions. Well, let's do a couple of things. One, give me one character who is absolutely not going to survive the finale other than Vecna. One heroic character that's absolutely not going to survive
it. I'm going to go with Hopper.
That would have been mine.
But I'm not sure because they gave him the option to get blown up and to blow himself up, and he didn't.
See, I think he's got that bomb still, and I think he's going to have to sacrifice himself to...
My take is the one who I think is truly not going to survive is 8.
Yeah, I mean, that seems pretty clear, but I wouldn't call her a major character at this point.
She's not. That's what it is. My thought as to the one I think, this has been an ongoing thing for me that I always thought was going to be is Steve.
Yeah.
And the reason I think Steve is because we've seen in two different previews the scene of Dustin being held back by somebody in camouflage, which could be Hopper, but could be, one of the military people, and just absolutely screaming, which fits to something happening with Steve.
Yep.
And I think that scene is reminiscent of the D&D game where we know Dustin is the one who fails the role to save the team. Yep. I think that's what happens right there. That's the scene we've seen is him failing. Now we know Erica then succeeds. But it's one of those where I think that's the thing. I don't know if they're going to go there. It may just be the fact that it's the people, he may be threatened. He may not actually die, but that's my take of that scene is basically Steve dying or being very close to dying. That's what we have. I don't know if it's going to actually happen. Behind it, is what we have. The one character I think, I'll show you, the one character I think who must survive, who we don't necessarily predict, is Lucas, because Lucas isn't there, and he's purposely not there. He's off with the jocks in the D&D game, and so I think we've got the thing with that. I think he has to survive with it. The one I think is really the question is Max. Because technically Max has to die to open the portals, from what we know. Or does she really? Because really he's just cracking the world. I don't think we necessarily know, but I've always thought it would be Hopper because he was sort of the obvious one as to what it is. I don't think it's L. I think a lot of people think it is L. I think I would have said at the beginning of season 5
they've set it up
L.
to be L, which tells me it's not going to be L.
Yeah, that's and the reason being is the whole we have to go her and being we have to go down together. I don't think is going to be the reality. I think they're going to figure something else out. They realize it's not the reality. They're going to start down that path. Somebody else is going to figure out it's not true. You commented about the fact of setting up the Terminator moment, with the L being set up as the Terminator self-sacrifice moment, which is interesting being the K as Linda Hamilton.
Yeah.
And so you got to wonder if that might be set up on purpose.
That's the kind of thing they would absolutely do.
They would absolutely do. That's the thing with it. So yeah, that's my take. Who dies is, I think it's going to be
I'm going to go with Will, actually. I think now that Will has had his big moment and his big coming out thing, I think that gives him the freedom to sacrifice himself and like die with his truth.
Okay. I can definitely see that. So what it is, it's the other reason, quite frankly, I mentioned I don't think it can be L is because I think Mike and L need to stay together.
Yeah.
It was originally set up that could be a good self-sacrifice, but because of Will's coming out, thing in conjunction with it, I think you need Mike and L to be together. You kind of need that to resolve that piece.
Okay, then one last piece, and then we'll wrap this up.
I got a couple more questions.
Okay. Well, here's one question I got, and then I'll turn it over to you. What is the % chance that this is the last Stranger Things content we see produced?
I think it's relatively low, but I do think it's the last thing we're going to see as a TV show that's set in this time period. I think we might very well see a sort of later scene, earlier scene. In some sense, we're not going to see a bunch of Star Wars, investigating the holes of this. I think we're going to see, we may see an Acolyte version, and again, treating the idea of like the Broadway show, which is set in literally 1959. And so the thing being, okay, we can have something like that. I don't think we're going to see a lot though. I think Netflix realizes in some respects the show needs to end. Yep. And it does. The show needs to end. It needs to have a resolution, and then it needs to just stay there. And that's the thing with it. I can very well believe they're going to play around with it just a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be anything major.
All right. So what else you got?
So I have two more with the things with it. I'm going to give you the basic one. Is Vecna Henry a hero or a villain?
Say it again. Is Henry
Vecna 01, whatever you want to call him, is he a hero or is he a villain?
I mean, he's very obviously set up to be so what's the argument for hero?
So my argument with it is, again, I think Vecna and Henry are two different people. I would contend they're both. I would contend Vecna is the villain, Henry is the hero, because Henry's doesn't want to be there voluntarily. What we have seen, all the stuff in Henry's mind, et cetera, as to what it is Henry fighting Vecna. It's they're two different people. We're going to have Henry come out, and that's based upon Henry being afraid. So what it is, we're going to have what is Henry afraid of, which is one of the questions I had, which we sort of answered. We've got potentially both. And the comment's always been Vecna's the most misunderstood character. I think we're going to get something out about Henry Vecna, which may not make him into a villain after all. I think he's still going to he's going to be the villain for this story, but I think he may have sort of a redemption arc type of story.
Wouldn't it be interesting if they separated Henry from Vecna and they killed Vecna, but Henry somehow survives?
I think that's kind of potentially where we're going with this and things like that. And then I have my playful question, which is actually from my son, and I think this is a really good one. Are we going to see Dart?
Dart. Oh, the
Polywog that's raised by Dustin.
Yeah.
So, the named after the Three Musketeers.
Yep.
Are we going to see Dart? Remember, he has a distinctive mark, so he would be able to stand out.
Or Barb. They find a way to finally bring Barb back.
I think we potentially see with Barb. I don't think we're going to bring Barb back, but I think we may see Barb. We may see her dead or something along those lines. But the real question he had is, are they going to bring Dart back? Because he loved Dart. And I really thought they were going to bring Dart back. I actually thought we were going to see Dart in this, and I actually do still think we're going to see Dart.
All right. So there you go. There's our predictions. We will do another episode after tomorrow, probably sometime in January, where we will follow up on this and probably combine it with our Star Wars rundown, because we've got quite a bit of Star Wars.
We'll see as to what it is. But I think it depends on how shocking this is out of it.
There may be not much to talk about, or there may be a ton.
Lot.
So, all right, that's all for this time. We'll see you next time. Lorem, play us out.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Lewis Rice LLC, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. This podcast was produced and recorded in St. Louis, Missouri.